So I'm actually going to start here with the tournament fact sheets. You can find this at the GCSAA.org website. This gives you what the par is, the yardage, the stimp meter, like a lot of good pieces of information if you weren't aware. So all of this is available to you. Now, the things that I like to look at, it's definitely the yardage. Par is okay. I mean, it's not really the biggest thing, but you can use that as a data point. You can also use the stimp meter as a data point. 11.5, that's pretty average on tour. So the only time that 11.5 would be scary if the greens were very, very undulating, which I don't remember these greens being very undulating. I think they're pretty flat. So this is kind of slower. I mean, I wouldn't say they're flat. I think this is just average pace, but you can use this as a data point. You could also use average green size. I don't really think it matters this week, if I'm being quite honest, but you certainly can use that. I like to come down here to the turf grass. This is where I first check the tournament fact sheets. This is what I want to know. What are the greens? You know, what are the fairways and what is the rough? I really don't care about tees. Like, nobody really cares about tees. Why would you? You get to use a tee. The grass doesn't even have to be, a factor in any golf shot. So you can ignore this, but when it comes to greens, this would be your putting stat, obviously. Fairways would most likely be, I mean, this is both approach and around the green. So too is fairway or rough. That would also be approach as well as around the green. Now, I would more or less lean towards around the green when it comes to rough. I don't necessarily care too much about approach shot. Although, yeah, never mind. I would look at approach shot too. I wouldn't really dive too much into the weeds, honestly, though. So I like to come here just for the greens. And that is the grass that I am using. Like, if I was to pull up the cheat sheet for this week, I am only, let me actually pull up the cheat sheet. I'm only using bent grass. It says Bermuda, but I'm going to change that right now. It is bent grass. I'm using it for the greens. I've been using bent grass for the Byron Nelson since it's made its change to this golf course. That's also something to consider. Let me go ahead and throw that on the screen right now. So this golf course that's being used, TPC Craig Ranch, has only played here in 2022 as well as 2021. Obviously, COVID, we had a little bit of a break, so there wasn't a tournament played in 2020. And then prior to 2020, it was Trinity Forest Golf Club for 2 years. 2 years. And prior to that, it was TPC Las Colinas. Now, that is something worth consideration, because when it comes to the bucket system, if you're familiar with it, I'd use course history all the time. This week, it's going to be tournament history. And if you're going to look at anything that comes with this tournament, it should be tournament history. Because really, we only have 2 years prior to this that have really course information. You know, the only 2 years this course has been played was 2021 and 2022 on the PGA Tour. So you could use this. I personally think you want at least 2 years of data before you actually consider course history. So I think this is the first year you can actually start looking into course history. But I also don't mind if you wanted to use tournament history, because you're going to get some of the same golfers that come to this tournament every single year. This is a Texas event. We're going to have a lot of our Texans play in this golf tournament because it is near and dear to home. It's not a perfect science or anything like that, or, a perfect theory or whatever you want to call it. But I think you could still use tournament history just fine. And if you don't, I have really no allegiance whether it's tournament history or course history. If you don't want to use tournament history, don't. You have 2 years of course history. I think that's just fine. So just keep that in mind. Now, let's see. Do we have anything else to talk about when it comes to... No. One interesting note, they'll have these additional notes down here. One is this. A cool, dry spring has led to many issues with grass breaking dormancy. Every single week, you come here and we talk about the golf course and tournament information, I usually bring up the overseed that are on some of these golf courses and how, you know, they break dormancy. A lot of times I'll say we're not sure if the superintendents at that golf course just let the natural grass grow through, you know, break dormancy, or if they burn the overseed. And if you want to know how they do that, it's through chemicals. They spray chemicals on the grass that will kill the overseeded grass, but it won't affect the Bermuda or whatever the natural grass is underneath it. So I always think that's really interesting. This is only really affecting the tees with the Bermuda grass as well as the rough. So I imagine there's probably some overseed that's still actually, no, I don't think there is, because if you read this, it says the turf density will not be what it was in the like it was in past years, meaning it will probably be thinner grass. It won't be, you know, fully bloomed grass, meaning the rough won't be as hard. It won't be as difficult. So I think you still would use Bermuda. There's no overseed, and even if there was, there's nothing telling us what kind of overseed it is. So just I read that earlier and I'm like, that's pretty interesting. So I think around the green probably isn't going to be as challenging. I don't have stats to show you if it was challenging in previous years, but if you have that capability, maybe around the green this week, not as important as it might have been in past years. Just throwing that out there. Then you can also see that like Winter Storm has caused some damage on the greens collars. You can ignore that. Not a big deal. They wouldn't be playing the PGA Tour on this golf course if it was damaged, which reminds me of the Detroit Golf Club. I don't know if anyone saw that on the news, but they had a couple greens vandalized. People went in and poured stuff on the greens. It doesn't look like it causes, you know, like deep-rooted issues, so I think they'll be fine, but it'll be really interesting to see what happens with that tournament if you know, the course doesn't actually heal up in time. Anyways, I just wanted to do that little side note because it reminded me of this. Another data point you could use when it comes to this golf course information is Tom Weiskopf is your course architect. Basically, what I would do with this, whatever database you're using, whatever website you're using, maybe put an architect and just see what their average finishing position is. I really personally wouldn't care. Don't get too far into the weeds about strokes gain stats. Just not that big of a deal, honestly. I would just look at average finishing position just to see what it looks like on, you know, Weiskopf. And if you wanted, you know, like if you're throwing this into a model, I would only, out of 100 points, I'd only give this like 2 points for the architect. That's basically all that I would give. That's how much you should understand that I care about course architect. At least for this tournament. I don't think it really matters. Yeah, that covers the kind of the golf course piece of, well, more or less the agronomy piece of the golf course. What I like to do every single week is kind of go over the golf course and the layout of it, just to kind of figure out what shot shape might actually be, you know, more beneficial than another shot shape. Really, you have 3 shot shapes. If we're being technical, you've got a fade, you've got a draw, and you got a straight ball. It's not really a shape when you consider, but whatever. I'm not going to get into the psychological component about that, but I like to look to see, well, is there a preferred shot shape? And if there is, well, on my cheat sheet, I do have their shot shapes, at least some of them. I have to admit, I've been a little lazy this year with updating golfer profiles, mostly because I've been working my butt off trying to get my database up and running to apply to my website. So then I can give that to you guys. The golfer piece, it's very simple. And I guess now that I say that, I kind of kicking myself because a lot of this is pretty easy. Tom Kim, we all know, fades the golf ball. KH Lee also fades the golf ball. Taylor Montgomery fades the golf ball. I have to go in and update these things. Yeah, I'm not going to go through all of these, but anyways, most of these are available to you. You can go check it out at that cheat sheet. But yeah, going back to the golf course, it doesn't really look like there's a particular shot shape that really is beneficial over the other one. Sure, I have 3 fades on approach shots, not an end all be all, versus 1 draw. One of these fades, if you read this is also another thing I would suggest doing. Pause the video and read the descriptions that I have. Going for 2 on this par 5 will benefit from a golfer hitting a fade. So those that do hit fades will make this par 5 a little bit easier, a little bit more accessible to get an ego putt out of it. So keep that up. That's how I look at it. It doesn't look like there's any other par 5, and it really doesn't, I don't know, it doesn't really matter. You could, golfers who don't primarily hit this shot shape can just play it safe and, just par that hole and try to birdie the other ones. I mean, it's as simple as that, at least for some of these PGA Tour players. So when I look at this, I don't really necessarily see, one shot shape being more prevalent than another. So I think everyone's pretty open, and you kind of see that every single week or every single year at this event. And I say every single year, I mean each year, because there's only been 2 years where this golf course has been played. And if we go and take a look, KH Lee, he doesn't really shape it one direction or another. Spieth draws the golf ball most of the time. He obviously is introduced a fade more so nowadays. Sam Burns hits a fade. Kazire hits a draw. Matsuyama hits, he hits both. He can go both ways. Sebastian Munoz last year hit a draw almost primarily. Berger hits a fade. I can't remember what Stallings does. Xander hits a draw. Palmer hits a fade now. So does JT. Just going through some of these. So yeah, maybe fade is actually kind of a little bit more beneficial. And this is obviously, I watch a lot of golf, and I also provide instruction on the side. I know how a lot of these golfers, what their preferred shot shapes are just from memory. Vegas hits a draw. There's Spieth again. He hits a draw. So it's kind of, you can go either or. It doesn't really matter. Mix it in equally or don't care about it at all, honestly. So really, shot shape doesn't really matter. Now, coming to the tournament information, your strength of field's 229. Last year, I think it was 299, like 70 points higher. Oh, God, I had it 350. What was 2021? Do we have that by chance? 275. So, okay, so in 2021, this tournament might actually be closely related, like we could kind of compare that year to this year. In 2022, it was almost, it was 100 points higher, 130 or 120 points higher than it was this year. We had a few more notable names, which also reminds me, Jordan Spieth isn't in this event. If he was, he'd probably add maybe 20 points to the strength of field. So it would be very similar to 2 years ago. But he obviously withdrew. Got to be cognizant of that. I have already updated my spreadsheet, so you don't even have to see Jordan Spieth's name on there. Just remember, he withdrew. So this is a very weak event. Weak field, I should say. 2 10K golfers. We will have a full field event, so there'll be 156 golfers in this field. I don't have all of the names yet, but with some of the withdrawals, I've already made the replacements on here. In fact, if you were to go to the cheat sheet and scroll all the way down to the bottom, you'll see the guys that were added in. So Stanley, Mac Meissner, DJ Tran, and George McNeil. I don't have their DK name plus ID because DK hasn't updated it yet. I'm assuming I'll get that tomorrow, so I'll make sure that that's available to you guys tomorrow. But quite frankly, you're probably not playing these guys anyways, so it doesn't really matter. But yeah, I think we have like 3 golfers waiting to. Maybe you already know what it is or who they are. I don't remember if this is an open where people can qualify for it, but if it is, then those are the 3 golfers that we're waiting for. I don't think it's going to matter one way or the other. You're probably going to be more focused on the top of the salary leaderboard than try to figure out who are the guys that are being added in. I just wanted to provide that for you so you have all the information. So, weak strength of field, 156 golfers in the field. Your traditional cut, top 65 in ties. going to be a birdie fest. So I would probably focus on trying to get a lot of birdie makers. And obviously, if some of you don't know what that is, it's just basically trying to find your volatile golfers. You could use birdie or better if you wanted. You could also use like scoring. So like it was minus 26 last year and minus 25 the year before. You could go to events where the score is lower than minus 20 and see who are the golfers in the field this week that are good in those conditions. And then just apply that to your model. Or, you know, take snapshots of certain golfers and maybe anchor your lineups around those golfers. I think those are all easy, or shouldn't say easy. Those are all ways that you can attack this week. So keep all that in mind. I think that's all that I have for the golf course. Let me double check here. Yeah, I think we're good. We covered grass, we covered strength of field, we covered, you know, what shot shapes are important. We're good. That covers your tournament and golf course information.